Breaking the gray.
Sarah, we're back.
Yes.
We're back. So, hey, we're doing a whole series here of Sarah Visits the United States. And it's like, where in the world is Sarah Turner? And you're in the still
can you
in the
guess
basement,
from my secret?
but you are safe. You have the key to get out.
Yes. Okay. I haven't been kidnapped and locked in a basement, although it is a very spooky basement. I have to give you that.
There's no black phone on the wall or anything, right?
No.
Okay. So where are you? Are you in upstate New York or
I'm in upstate New York? I'm in a place called Sydney Centre, which sounds a little bit more grandiose than it is because there's actually only about 5 houses in Sydney Centre. But yeah, dude.
Did you meet them all?
Oh, my neighbours? No, I don't know. No, not quite yet.
That would be very rebellious of you.
That would be very rebellious of me. Yes.
You meant to say, did you meet your neighbor?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, but speaking of neighbor or neighbors, you were out this morning doing your grounding exercise to watch the sunrise, I imagine.
Yes.
And did you see the sunrise?
Well, do you know, I'm such an idiot because I went out and I actually thought I heard a bird of prey. And I was like, oh, yes, I think I'll go and identify this bird. Wandering around, looking up at the sky, totally bare feet, just in pajamas and a cup of tea. Sat and had a little sit down, walked around the block. Next time I came back to the same spot, black bear, sitting right there where I'd been sitting. I didn't even look down. I probably sat right next to it. I probably just literally sat on a note next to this bear. What is this ridiculous English woman doing? But yes, that was my Woodstock experience.
Black bears are nice. There are differences between grizzly bears are not very kind. But black bears, they seem to be sentient beings to me. I feel like they're self-aware. He probably wanted to borrow a mirror just to make sure they didn't have any honey on his beard.
It was a very cute bear, but it probably wasn't the wisest thing I've ever done. But
no.
What a fabulous experience. What a fabulous experience.
You probably heard someone else talking. We have our guest again, and we're back. We have tried many times to have this guest, and for some reason, whether it's headphones or it's the cameras or it's our computers or our Wi-Fi or black bears, we have not been able to finish an episode with our guest.
So hi everyone. Just want to identify myself as the bear tamer from Canada because that's what we do up here in Canada.
Yeah,
because
if anyone knows about
all that exists up here is the logging industry. So we recruit the animals, right, to get it done.
Jacques, you're back. This is the party scientist for everybody. Are you really in Canada?
I'm finally back. So 8 months of distracting myself with peak experiences and conferences, and I'm finally returned in my wonderful abode with my wonderful props and my wonderful biohacking tools all around me. So it's great to be home.
Awesome. You just held up a sign. And since we talked last, we have a YouTube channel, so you can see us at The Rebel Scientist. If you type that in when you get to YouTube, you'll see that Jacques just held up a sign that said "excited?" ? And I'm very excited to talk to you. Thank you.
Yes, me too. Me too. That's a big. We need signs too, Russ. Like, yes, hell yes.
We do. Yeah.
Now let's
is there a bear here? No.
Oh no. There's no bears around here. But let's just be very clear that if we're truly excited, we first have to define what excitement is, as a scientist would. And everyone, I would like to share that excitement is a neurochemical phenomenon that I have spent years and years trying to figure out through the use of music and dance and song. And so we would do that right now if this platform had that capability, but we will just do it in our heads.
What, music, dance and song? I'm sure we can arrange that, Jacques. That doesn't sound too difficult. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. This is going to go in a strange direction, but let's just talk about the triggers to excitement. It could go very much in the wrong direction, but like, read Brene Brown's book this year about how we name emotions, right? And we only use 3 or 4 emotions when we describe how we're feeling. I feel terrible. I feel sad. I'm happy. I'm tired. And that's about it. And stressed. But like, there are probably many forms of excitement.
Yeah, I mean, there's more like thought mediated excitement. There is excitement plus connection. One thing I think a lot about is, when we have an emotional experience alone, how does it change when we share that with another person? And one of my quotes is, joy shared is doubled, sorrow shared is halved. And in fact, sorrow shared often translates into joy and a sense of feeling connected and safe really quickly. So sorrow can be transmuted very quickly when a very conscious listener is present.
That's very true. I mean, I think this is becoming more and more relevant as people come out of these strange situations where we've been in for a couple of years, where everybody's kind of been in some kind of trauma to a certain or a lesser extent, locked in, disconnected from their friends. Now I feel like it's a collective trauma that we're all coming out of. And that community piece seems to me to be even more important. I mean, certainly here I am. The reason I'm in upstate New York is because my friends almost did an intervention, because I would kind of come out of being on my own, just sitting there doing stuff. And I like messaging my friends like, oh God, I've got a bit of self-doubt. I don't know how it's working. They're like, right, okay, we are taking you away and we're just going to do good things. We've been skinny dipping in the lake. We've done all kinds of things. And instantly, all of that stuff I had going on in my head, it's dissipated and it's gone. And really, it was just simply that, I was just disconnected.
Sarah, you just gave me a great business idea, and it would be the kidnapping people who have intentionally isolated themselves and like kind of, forcibly
exposing them. Yeah.
Reinvigorating them with human connection.
Exactly.
I'm seeing like, I call up and I'm like, hey, Sarah, I need you to kidnap this person at this location. They're really, they're not answering my calls. Like you need to drop them off here. We're going to throw a party for them.
Let's do it. I'll be the Harvey Keitel character. We can come in. I've actually got a little black car I'm driving around. Yeah.
And honestly, since returning from my trip, I've kind of been in a hermiting mode. And one of my recent articles called The Dynamite versus the Candle explains this new mode that I exist in where 5 days a week, I'm pretty much alone, reading, learning, and creating content and creating programs. And then for like 2 days a week, I participate in this very high intensity, exciting, energizing human connection. And so like I'm riding this wave of different modes in my life. So ironically, I would probably, someone would probably want to kidnap me a part of that service.
Done, Jack. Right. Where's the address? No. I totally understand it. And what you're saying is there's a place for, getting shit done. We've all got to actually sit down and get stuff done. But also we need to not forget the other piece, because if you're just doing that and you're finding that you're isolating, humans are tribal animals, we're meant to be in a pack. So it's how to do that in a way where, it's not forced or, you are actually prioritizing that side of your life.
So I'll just say one more thing. I did a darkroom retreat where I meditated in the dark for 8 days, and I integrated a lot of life experiences in there, and I asked myself a lot of important questions. One question that I focused on with my awareness and how it works, how my approach was I would come up with a question and then I just watch my thoughts. So I do an open awareness meditation where things would pop into my head and I would look at them and then they would vanish, or I would consciously follow and expand a thought. So it was kind of like meditation, but more so imagination. And this is one of the dysfunctional beliefs about like integration and like self-development is it's this solo activity. And, human beings are distractions to our reflective internal processes. Like if we want to develop inner peace, we got to go at it alone and we got to meditate alone in a cave. And I think that is problematic because I really believe that when we integrate with another person, we open our mind even more, right? Like this new perspective can help us integrate in a not only in our own way, but in a way that we can't even imagine. And so I really believe that integration and just becoming a better human, you know, ironically, I don't have a men's group. I don't have a vulnerability peer group right now. I did in the past. I really got to restart that to kind of feed myself my own advice.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
No, yeah, we've talked about this before with you specifically around that need for like being vulnerable, right? Like and having comfort in knowing that you can trust someone to be vulnerable with, like that in itself is exciting. And it doesn't mean that like I'm having an emotional, like I think in some cases the people that in your life might get jealous of that. Like I have a person in my life that I have an emotional connection with, but it's not sexual. It's not anything. It's just like I connect with that person at a very different level. And I think we need to maybe take stigma away from the term connection, that it's not all about sex, dudes. Like it's like everyone, it tries to like associate, well, I guess they're sleeping together. No, it's like I'm connected to Sarah in a very different way than I'm connected to anyone else in this world. And we share something very special together, but that's, it's ours.
Can I ask you, Russ?
I love you, Sarah. I love you so much.
This word intimacy, I think, has this fear factor to it. And it has these sexual romantic associations. And I'm curious, it seems to me like you have intimacy, platonic intimacy with a few people in your life. And I'm curious what that looks like and what that brings to mind when I share that word intimacy.
Yeah, that is a powerful word, but again, it's not sexual. It has nothing to do with me wanting to again, like I'm not going to violate anyone's personal space in doing that, but I can have a connection with you over Zoom. Sarah and I have met how many times, Sarah? Twice,
yeah.
And we've known each other for 3 years. We've done over almost 100 recordings, and but I have an intimate relationship with Sarah that's like, it's very different than anyone else, right? It's unique, and I cherish that, right? I think I cherish having that relationship with her because I trust her, she trusts me. We do business together. We also do this together, and it's But it's an interesting point. Like I'm curious to hear your perspective on it.
Yeah. I'm also curious to hear Sarah's perspective and just the nature of this relationship. Ultimately, I think intimacy is really defined by emotional connection and sharing more personal matters and vulnerable matters with one another. I've also, since going to Guatemala and living with all the touchy-feely hippies, for me, an element of intimacy is like this nourishment, like this empowerment. And oftentimes we do that through words, but what can be more powerful is just supportive touch and hugs and eye contact and these non-verbal elements. So for me, I think it's really like in the emotional space. And I think when we have intimate relationships, we are much more unfiltered in our communication, and we're not afraid of our reputation. So we're more likely to share things that we hesitate to share with someone, who might still be in the space of judging us. And so we're really not worried about that image anymore, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
for sure.
Yeah, Sarah, what's your thought?
My thought is, certainly when we started doing these podcasts, it was a time of total lockdown. So I was totally and utterly isolated and cut off. And actually, I was seeing no one. So actually being able to speak to Russ on a weekly basis, and we had some fabulous guests, even in that first year, it was just us two doing it. And then we started to get guests. And even having that camaraderie of sharing the experience of some of our guests, because, we have a lot of people with fringe ideas. That was really nourishing, because otherwise, I was on my own in my own world constantly. And even now, I say I'm in upstate New York with my friends, and they're saying, well, why don't you stay and we'll do this? And I was like, oh no, I think I really ought to go now. And they're like, okay, you've just gone into survival mode where you just don't want to take help from anyone because, you know, if you're in that state for long enough, you have to depend on yourself. But then it becomes a little bit not helpful because you kind of close yourself off. So, you know, that piece, being able to open up to people. And yes, you're right. Now I'm here with my friends and we can, let's say, go swimming together, do stuff together. We have that physical connection. But certainly in that first state, just having this Zoom connection was hugely important to me. So, you know, the word intimacy, I mean, it was just us two once a week having the conversation. So to me, you know, I think we can't understate the importance of community and connection, especially in the time that we're in, where, you know, it's still easy to be isolated. I mean, I know people in England who are still shielding from what's going on. And I really think that their mental health, you know, shows that, you know, there are some people who really have become very ill as a result from this kind of lack of connection. And for me, it's difficult because my friends were exactly right. I did close myself down because if you have to rely on yourself, that's it. You start to put up barriers to anybody actually helping you. So yes, it's hugely important, these connections. I totally value Russ and I's time. I totally value my friends. It's now, how do we, as a community and a collective, how do we support other people because it's not something that just happened in one place. You know, this is something that's gone on over the entire world. We're kind of suffering from this collective trauma.
It's amazing. Isn't that interesting, Sarah, that like we went through something globally for the first time. Almost everyone on the globe was hearing the same thing. We all had lockdowns. We all went through a very similar thing. But our reaction to it was that in our country, it tore us further apart. It created an us versus them, even worse. For some stupid reason, we can't seem to come eye to eye. And I think it's because we're so obsessed with 24-hour news here that, like, you know, it just pulls. But like, this is a time where we do really need each other. Like, rather than fighting over whether or not I'm wearing a mask at McDonald's or not, doesn't matter of like, do you care about my well-being? If you don't, then fuck off. And that's basically what we're saying to people, is that we don't really care about your well-being. I only care about my well-being. And is that what's going to happen when this next pandemic hits? Is like, that's going to be worse than COVID? Are we all just going to like be like rats and fight each other and be like, my survival is better than your survival? Like, I have kids. My survival is nothing compared to the survival I want for my children. And it's just a different feeling I have. Like, I would sacrifice myself for any one of my 4 children. But would I sacrifice myself for my neighbor? Maybe, yeah. I like her. Yeah, she's nice.
I want to emphasize what you're getting at here. I think it's a really crucial element of community. And what you're getting at is this concern for other people's well-being. And not only concern, but action for other people's well-being. And the final stage of that might be an element of self-sacrifice for other people's well-being. And so when we think about the example of, and I just visualize the subway in Japan, like before COVID, if you had a cold, you'd wear a mask in the subway, even if it was a cold. It doesn't kill anybody. It doesn't have this weird long haul symptoms, right? Like, so, you know, that's what I really see as a virus in Western culture, is the individualism, like what consumerism and capitalism, like these indirect effects of this system based on like consumption and like just materialism, like buying things. I really think it's led to this individualism, which I think is not compatible with this, like, oh, like I'm concerned for other people's achievements, but actually I'm only concerned for my achievements and I'm just trying to show off my altruism. So that's point number one. And then the second thing I want to talk about is the difference between community, connection, and intimacy. And we throw around this word community. A lot of people who are in communities don't have intimacy. Like, you may have a cul-de-sac and you may take care of children in your cul-de-sac, and that's like fantastic. That's a healthy, functional neighborhood, and that's brilliant. Like, oh, we share a lawnmower, and like we watch out for each other, and like we have keys for each other's houses in case they get broken into. You know, like, that's great. That's community. Now, a lot of people exist in that community and they don't have intimacy. They don't have that emotional support. They don't have that depth of relating about the full human experience, the joys of life, the sorrows of life, the deaths of life. And I really think that people are not like deprived of community or connection necessarily. Like they're starved for meaningful, deeper, nurturing connection. And I see there being a lack of spaces in the mainstream world for this form of human contact. Like I look around at our entertainment system and I look at how alcohol is this massive norm. And by the way, alcohol largely disables our ability, like it disables us from paying attention so that we can get to that deep emotional space. Like that's there's a sweet spot, of course, but largely the frontal lobe becomes deactivated and you lack this intentionality in how you connect. And I'm totally inviting devil's advocate here. Let's explore this. So to summarize, crucial element of community is like concern and action for others' well-being. Second point is community is often not as nourishing as it could be because people are not intimate with one another.
Hold on, let me just go for 1 second. I know I've been talking a lot today, and I want to make sure I give you your chance too. So there's two things that I'm really concerned about, and I have 20-year-old kids, and I think social media has destroyed the need for in real life intimacy, because they feel like they're getting it fed to them through social media, and there's some connection to that TikTok video I'm watching, that Instagram reel. So that connection replaces real connection, and when they're together for real, they're all on their fucking phones. Like I watch my daughters, and she's 21 now, and they all sit there on their fucking phones, like not talking to each other, not connecting with each other. And so there's something there that I think has really disconnected us, and even in our attempts to stay connected. Like, and that bugs me so much, because I feel like no one's paying attention to one another.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize what you're sharing. When people spend more time looking on a screen, they have less attention to spend in this deep emotional space through eye contact, through full listening. And we're seeing screen time just kind of, well, it's just like, it's pretty much maxed out.
Yeah, for sure. But how then, Jack, because you're the self-styled party scientist and you're a connection, and presumably you're an intimacy expert too. What is your solution to this? Because the phones and things aren't going away, and in fact they're becoming more and more integrated into almost every phase of life. It's becoming harder and harder. I mean, in the UK, I don't know what it's like here yet, but they've done away with all menus and things. So, before I might say to my nephews, we're not taking phones to the restaurant, but you can't avoid it now because you can't look at the menu now without phones and things, so it's kind of being integrated more and more. It's easy to kind of get in a spiral of worrying about that, but we want to focus more on, what are the positive things we can actually do, and how are you kind of trying to encourage more connection and intimacy in the groups that you're running? Because, it's something where I don't know, when I go out with my nephews, I don't really know how to bring them back to me, apart from, banning the phones, which just makes me a bit of an unpopular auntie. I mean, what's your solution?
Oh my gosh, yeah, lots of things that I want to go through here. The first is we just need to replace alcohol with MDMA.
Okay, dude.
I'm just kidding.
Number one, that's the number one tip, right?
But honestly,
we can add that to our kidnapping service.
That would have like aside from the negative effects on the brain, that would actually like add to a lot of people's well-being. Few things immediately came to mind. First thing that I want to go into is this meditation that I recently discovered, and it's kind of a habit I'm cultivating. And so whenever I look into someone's eyes, I will remind myself that this person is mortal. and that they're gonna die. And
Jesus.
it seems really dark.
Yeah.
It seems really dark. But the reality is, there's a lot more reason to be really present and to really listen to this person when you realize that they're mortal and like they're gonna die.
Right.
And you don't want to be the fool who's like, oh wow, I never actually gave this person my full attention and love, and now they're gone. Oh, I feel like shit. So that's my first little brain twist that I've incorporated into my massive habit toolkit spreadsheet on Excel. The second thing is oftentimes what I'll do if I'm at a dinner table and everyone's on their phones, I will name it. I will name that dynamic. I'll be like, hey, everyone, can I just make an announcement? It seems like we're all consumed by our smartphones. Do we want that to be the case, or do we want to change it? And not being the holier than thou, giving the choice to the group. How do we want to interact? Hey, I'm noticing you're on your phone. This is what I do all the time in my one-to-one connections. Hey, I'm noticing you're on your phone while we're talking. I don't want you to be distracted, and I want you to be able to sort out what you got to do. Maybe we can connect another time when you're fully present. And oftentimes, they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. You're so right. Like, I want to connect with you. So this idea of naming the dynamic goes beyond naming that someone is on their phone and that they're distracted. I mean, it doesn't need to be distraction via the phone. It could be like someone looking at the screen and then like suddenly like having their eyes just move around. Like, I will name that as well. I'll be like, hey, like, you seem to be interested in a few other things. Like, do you want to, is this a good time to drop in, or would you like to connect another time? Also, I'm writing an article right now. It's called One Human at a Time. And this is my new mantra for human connection. One human at a time. Oftentimes, we're trying to pay attention to multiple things, multiple humans at the same time. And guess what? We're also trying to make friends, new friends all the time instead of nourish our existing relationships. There's this bias for the new, the novelty, the sensationality. Like, we need to go out and seek out peak experiences and meet new people. It's like, no, y'all, if y'all want to be really happy, like, focus on those intimate relationships and like hang out with them. Stop trying to chase the new, because that's an endless pit of dissatisfaction. So, naming the dynamic, acknowledging that people are mortal, and then focusing on that one human at a time. And they're really all related to creating this urgency for presence. Okay. For presence. Now, three other things I want to say. Okay. Three other things I want to say. I want like hosting and facilitation to be a super cool thing. It is a super cool thing, but it isn't like branded that way. The alcohol companies are not having like event hosts and facilitators in their advertisements. It's not the new cool yet. So whenever I see someone take a hosting role, and Sarah, you said you don't really have those skills. Well, like, just the skill of getting everyone's attention, and being like, hey, I just want to say, I'm so glad to be here with all of you, and I want to be present with all of you, and I want to hear about your lives. That is hosting. And what I do whenever I see someone like take a social risk like that is I celebrate them, and I'm like, wow, first of all, I'm going to participate fully. Second of all, I'm going to pull them aside and tell them how courageous they are and how much I want to hang out with them and like witness them in their hosting. Third, finally, so the question is, how do we encourage people to get off phones? Most of it is just the environment. Okay? So it's the digital environment. Our digital environments are dysfunctional. People have like 20 different communication platforms. All their notifications are on. And like they're just they're getting pinged and dinged, and they're picking up their phone all the fucking time because it's in their pocket. Okay, so threefold: turn off your notifications, leave your phone somewhere where you can't just pick it up. Even if the phone is on the dinner table, it has been shown by research to distract us. It micro distracts our attention from people that we're visiting with. Okay, this is research by Cal Newport and digital minimalism. So develop a healthy relationship with your phone. Second part of the environment is like just the physical environment. Well, and what I mean by that is there a great experience happening that engages people? And how we gather, unfortunately, is quite passive and boring to a large degree. Like even at a DJ set, there's nothing really going on. Like people are all self-conscious and they're just looking at worshiping a celebrity. So we need to create better face-to-face experiences. And this is my new mission for my life, is to revive how Western civilization gathers. To revive how Western civilization gathers. How we gather is pretty suboptimal for the health benefits and for the exhilaration and joy and connection. And so we need to reinvent how we gather, and we need to reinvent, like how we come together at a dinner table even.
So let's go through. That was a lot. Thank you. And again, mind blown, but still connected to body. Yep. I'm still here and aware. And there's a lot. So one thing I'd like to say is this, like, isn't that the point of Burning Man? Isn't that what everyone that goes to Burning Man is saying? Is that like we're connecting at a different level? And so that's one part of it, right? So like a Burning Man experience, fine. We've talked to Dasha Maximoff, who has her retreats in the Dominican Republic. Like those are also experiences, but a lot of times those experiences include disappearing with MDMA, disappearing with drugs, disappearing with music, and you're still not getting that human connection in a way that you're talking about here. And so, is it the fact that people are so viscerally insecure that they don't want to connect, and they create all these opportunities to get together, then disappear, and then when they're so fucked up, they're like, okay, I guess we can have sex now because I'm super. All my prohibitions are down now. I'm just going to go for it. But like, is that what it is?
Baby, keep going.
Yes, I don't know. I know it all bounces back to Tinder and every app to be like, I'm going to go meet somebody new. This person doesn't look like my type. But like, I don't know. I find that what you just said is the most important thing we've heard on the Rebel Scientist podcast. Mark it here. That like we need to reinvent how we connect with one another. And what we're doing right now is reinvention, but like physically being together and being aware. And if my kids and my wife heard me talking right now, they're going to be like, you're such a hypocrite. You're the most disconnected human being at the dinner table and throughout life. And it's true. I am. I have baseball going on. Sarah and I are slacking. I'm slacking with my running partner. I got work going on. And and I got 2 dogs running around. My ADHD is triggered constantly and I'm super disconnected all the time. So I thrive to understand how to just turn the noise down. And so I can just focus on the things that are most important. And I think what you said about seeing the people and the humans in my life as mortal, like that really like grounds it.
So before you jump in, Sarah, after my long ass monologue, you mentioned FOMO and you mentioned Burning Man. And first of all, I just recorded a podcast episode critiquing Burning Man with my friend. So we'll get into that in a second, but I just want to read to you one paragraph from my new article, One Human at a Time, because it touches on everything we're talking about right now. So contained in this one mantra is the most important principle for human connection I've learned. The quality of your connections is determined by the quality of your attention. But there's more. The mantra is not only about paying solid attention during your connections, it's also about foregoing trying to connect with as many humans as possible and focusing on the one-on-one time. It's about overcoming FOMO, overcoming the toxic thought, there's someone better I should be connecting with. Let me look around to find them.
Yeah. Very cool.
Sarah, where you are right now, there's probably 50 humans. And let's imagine you couldn't you didn't have a car, you had no way to leave. One of those 50 humans is somebody that you're going to have to connect with. You don't have choice anymore.
Well, to be honest, I think that's why I'm here, because I have friends who are very switched on, and I think they could, I've been messaging from England, the business is not going very well, all these, they're getting all these I don't even know I'm sending them, but they're getting all these distress calls coming from me. And then as soon as I get to New York, they're like, right, we're picking you up and we're going to upstate where they know there's no people and we haven't even got a telly here. And so last night we went to some funny little shop. We're barbecuing. We're doing all kinds of stuff. I'm just connecting with these 3 friends that I'm with. And, you know, I think that was purely their intention because, you know, I'm saying, are you all right? Yes, I'm fine. And then, you know, they sat me down and said, Sarah, you're not fine. Tell us what's going on. And I did. And, you know, it was kind of, I had to fess up to it. You know, they kind of pushed me and said, you've just gone into survival mode because you've had to, but you need to come out of it now. It's not healthy. You know, all this thing that you're doing where you're kind of protesting that you're fine and you're not, it's not helpful. So reach out and ask people for help, you know, even if I thought, oh God, I can't really afford to come up. So, no, I've got friends, you know, I can be a little bit vulnerable with them. And I think that's why I'm here. You know, like I say, literally, there's nothing for us to do. There's a lake. We'll probably jump in the lake. We'll probably, you know, we're going to barbecue some food. But it's, you know, I'm quite privileged to have those friends. Maybe people don't have that. You know, I'm very grateful for that. But this is why I'm interested, Jacques, in how you are actually integrating this and what are you actually doing? Because yeah, I get it. People, they either go to the pub and have a few beers or they're sitting at home watching Netflix. You know, really, that's for most of the time. You know, this is a special time for me. I don't come away to the woods every weekend. So how actually are you making more intimate connections in community? I mean, what is your actual strategy for that? Because it sounds cool, but I just wonder, how are you actually doing it?
Yeah, before I jump into that, Russ, you have anything you want to add?
I'm excited to see Sarah next week. That's for sure. And having quality one-on-one time with Sarah.
What are we going to do? Yeah. We're going to go to the middle of nowhere.
We're going to go to the middle of nowhere. But I'm curious about this because I've really tried to. I used to never enjoy my vacation. I never left my work. I always left my work. I worked at a company that was like I worked for Airbnb, and so one of the things they said was that when you go on vacation, you are not working. Our company is about creating belonging. And if you're not going to go belong somewhere else besides our office, then you're not doing the right thing. So like going on vacation, going somewhere new, going to Burning Man, going to an event, like, is there something that you suggest that we do to sort of ground ourselves to bring us into the present moment when we get there? Rather than, you know, turning off your phone, obviously, but like sometimes you go places you don't have an internet connection or cell connection, but are there things we can do to just be like, take me to this moment now and turn all the other crap off?
And I think you should also say Burning Man is a big event that happens in the desert. Because to be honest, Russ, nobody in the UK or Europe will probably know what you're.
Sorry. It's a bit, I'll let Jacques describe Burning Man. I've never been, but I have lots of friends that go, and they tell me it's life changing, and I'm like, I bet you it is.
Yeah. So the 2 questions that I'm presented with are related, right? Because your question, Russ, what do we do when we enter a social experience or when we meet our friends to ground and to maximize the likelihood of an intimate connection, perhaps? I think that's really related to my philosophy around building community. And it really just comes down to whether our nervous system is prepared to socialize and to be intimate. And what I've realized is it takes like less than 60 seconds to become more pro-social and feel more connected to the people around us. And so it's a really low time investment to lay the fertile soil for connection. What I do at the beginning of all my community experiences, and that's my secret sauce, is facilitation, hosting. It's leading these exercises that create this emotional synchrony, create this psychological safety, create this sense of unity, this group identity, right? Like, of course, there's a shadow to group identity, but when a group has an identity as a unit, then anyone in the group can talk to anyone. And when a group has a collection of social norms, anyone can connect with anyone in the group according to those norms. So, you know, kind of going tangent here, but I teach community builders how to set those social norms so that people have more meaningful connections at their gathering. Now, back to the nervous system. So, one thing I do at the very beginning of all my gatherings is I'll get people in a circle. I'll play a really beautiful song, and I'll just get people to take a moment to themselves and remind themselves of all the community they have in their lives, all the community in front of them, and to just be grateful. And I get them to visualize people's faces, people's smiles in their heads, and just breathe into like gratitude. Now, the next step, and I did this at my housewarming party in my living room behind me with my mom and my stepdad, is you get people into that state of gratitude, and then you invite people to acknowledge the impermanence of this community gathering. To acknowledge not only the impermanence of the gathering, but to acknowledge the impermanence of each other, right? Like the mortality factor. And so one thing I do now is when I get people to open their eyes and like really just like look at each other joyfully, I will shift it into like this kind of interpersonal mortality meditation where people acknowledge like the impermanence of it all, you know? But really, really, Sarah, like it just takes someone to be a facilitator. I mean, oftentimes people are in a group and it's just too organic. It's just like there's multiple threads. Someone didn't even finish what they were saying. Like I asked you for a story, you were telling your story, and then some other person chimes in with their story, and it's just dysfunctional. And it's like people are fighting for the conversational space. So really all it takes is for people to slow down together and for someone courageous to step up and moderate the conversation and be like, hold on. What you were sharing was really interesting. Keep going. And maybe you can share at the end. Like share at the end of this person's story. Don't just jump in. Like the problem with a lot of social interactions is like you're at a particular depth, right? And like then someone asks a deep question and maybe like storytelling happens, and then some, squirrel brain jumps in and the conversation goes back up to shallow. And then it happens again. It's a new story and it's, someone's sharing something about, back to shallow. And it's just like this constant readjustment to shallow because no one is focusing on the thread, focusing on an intention in the conversation. And ultimately, people are just like unconscious. They're just letting whatever pops into their head come out in their connection. And so that's why I really believe that if you're an event host or you're a community builder, like, no, stop spending your time and money on like fancy shit and like performers and like alcohol and food. Just like spend your shit on becoming an amazing facilitator and then get people to connect in the deepest way that they ever had. And I'm literally writing an article about this right now called Optimizing Your Event for Output. The output input ratio. And so to summarize all that, stepping into the role of a host and facilitator and ensuring people, speak and complete what they're speaking and slowing down the interaction. People really want to go fast, right? But when we slow down a group discussion, that's when people feel much more heard. And so much of it is just role modeling, right? So much of it is just role modeling.
And there's something that I've noticed a lot too, and that's like identifying with things. So like identifying with the fact that you are a manager, and in this session, I need to do this and this and this and this. Identifying with I don't speak up enough in my performance review. I was told that I need to speak up more. Like everyone's constantly doing that, and I think being a parent and listening to a lot of Eckhart Tolle and going through this like renewal and understanding of things related to being present is when you're a parent, there's a point where you need to stop parenting your children and you need to see yourself as an equal to your child. But there are so many parents that are like, my son's not listening to me. And Trust me, I do that. I know I do this. They're not listening to me. They're just doing all this stuff. They should be respecting me. I am their parent. Why are they not doing that? Versus just seeing eye to eye with them and not carrying the identity of like, I'm your father. You should be doing this. I'm your man. Like, why do we identify with these things so much that like it almost forces us to have to act in such an impure way when we're when we're with people. Like someone said recently, we're so ready to, when someone's having a really hard time and they've asked us for a conversation. The conversation is not for me to share it, give you advice. It's just listen. Can you just listen to me for like 10 minutes and shut the hell up so I can just emote? And that like changed a lot of just how I approach communication. Is like, I'm not here to give you advice. I'm here to just be an outlet for you, a trusting outlet for you. So I don't know, a lot in that, but like we try too hard to identify with these things, and it forces us to have an inauthentic relationship with the people we're with. Maybe.
Yeah. And just to emphasize that, I mean, when we're talking about the identity, I also think just about this like desire for the ego to be seen and to be heard and to be celebrated. And ironically, like, yeah, I want to see people, I want to hear people, and I want to celebrate people. But my desire to be seen, heard, and celebrated often is problematic to helping other people be seen, heard, and celebrated. And so like I'm just at this point where I don't really need to take up space anymore, you know? So and then the second thing that I want to emphasize is what you mentioned about like parenting. And I just think, you know, there's this difference between when we step into an interaction with the identity that we're like higher status or we're superior or we know better than someone, that just creates disconnection. And so and even the word coach, like, oh, I'm someone's coach, that still creates that superiority complex. So really it's like the proper term might be I'm someone's mastermind partner, and then just asking questions. There's so much progress we can make just by asking questions and help people realize these things on their own and work through their issues just with a simple question or just a simple phrase, tell me more. Tell me more.
Those are great. That's great advice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great advice. And I think it comes back to what we're kind of always banging on about in this show. It's like self-responsibility and awareness, because I think in order to be able to do all these things that you've spoken about, Jack, you need to have an awareness. You need to have an awareness when someone's gone off on a tangent, or you need to have an awareness when you yourself are taking the conversation. And that's maybe the hardest part of all of this, because certainly for myself, when I've got myself, I'm so frustrated by what's going on in the world that it only takes one little cue for someone to say something and I'm on a rant about blue screens or mobile phones or, mandates. And so, you need to have that awareness of one, where you're taking the conversation to a place where actually it's not nourishing for anybody, because nobody really wants to be in a group rant. It's not positive. But then also when somebody else is doing it, that you have that awareness of how to bring people back gently, which again, what you're talking about really, Jacques, is learning skills, because it's a skill to have an awareness of yourself, and it's a skill to bring people back gently, which is something, it's something that I'm learning, where you want to say, come on, we don't want to talk about all that right now. Talk about something positive. Well, that's not the way to do it, because then people are all... Yeah. You're judging, you're making a judgment. So I think we will definitely post links to your articles, because it sounds like in these articles, maybe you expand on that a bit more. Because it's like anything, you've got to learn how to do it. It's not something where you can all of a sudden be a good facilitator any more than you can be
I mean, like, I pretty much approach conversation as a facilitator. It's not like an unintentional, unconscious process. Certainly like some of these skills that I have are just really natural to me. And so it's not artificial anymore. But it certainly began artificially. Like, I used to not practice pausing. right?
Yeah.
I used to always try and fill the empty space instead of hearing someone and then just looking at them.
Yeah. Imagining their mortality.
Yeah. And then,
Yeah.
and
The
then they
whole
just
thing,
keep going.
it's a whole process. It's a whole, this is what I'm saying. This is why it's so interesting, because we don't see conversation, intimacy, and social interaction as something we need to work on. You know, we don't see it as that. And that's why it's cool to have you on this kind of biohacking show, because it's a skill you need to learn. And in a sense, it's a hack. How do you have, you know, something that's going to be a supportive interaction with people? You have to work at it. You know, you have to actually do these exercises.
There's something interesting here, because, you know, all of our social norms teach us to be competitive, right? And that, you know, you've got to win, right? You got to win and you got to win. And so, but there's something about empathy that I think it's not, you're not born in, like, maybe there are empaths. I'll say this. I think we can teach humans how to be empathetic. And I think this is what Buddhists have tried for a very long time. But I think empathy is one of those things that we should always strive to, like, if we're being empathetic, it actually forces somebody else to be empathetic with you. Like, we're so influential in our conversations that when we're acting some way, someone else is acting some way. Like, if someone's talking shit about somebody, you're going to start talking shit about somebody, unless you say something like, well, I wonder how that made them feel. They must be feeling awful. Like, can we teach empathy? Is that something that we can try to do in our conversations, is to not lecture empathy, but teach empathy by being empathetic?
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of friends who used to call me kind of psychopathic because I didn't have much empathy.
Same. Yeah.
And I think, yeah, I think that the enemy of empathy is disembodiment and like hyper intellectuality and also distraction. But I certainly believe that we can teach all these, and even if we're born with empathy, we can improve our attunement to another person's emotions.
And empathy in itself, it doesn't mean you're weak or that you're going to get bulldozed by somebody that's more aggressive than you. And actually, it disarms them. It's the most disarming thing you can do to someone who's super aggressive, is to have empathy for them. And I'm sure we have an ex-president who, you know, if we tried empathy on him, rather than just continually building up his aggression and doing that, but having some empathy, like, he really must be going through something terrible right now. Like, must be feeling awful that everything's crumbling around him. It's how we act, and it's what we reward. We're from 3 different countries. I prescribe that the Canadians are the nicest humans I've ever met on the planet. Every time I talk to a Canadian, they're so kind and wonderful. And I think, I don't know, I would love to practice that. I don't love judgment. I don't love aggression. I have daughters, I have sons. I want to teach it's okay to feel okay about somebody else and not make it about you.
Back at you, Jacques. I think we're coming to the end, but I want to point people of where they can get more of this information, because Russ, I've never seen you so animated on one of our podcasts. So this
Yes.
is obviously, you know, it's something that obviously is interesting to people, and people want to hear, because we do a lot of stuff about diet and how you can exercise. And I think there's a prescription for that. You know, if you want to have big muscles, you know, we've had someone on who can teach you, you know, you can do certain there's stuff you could do, but like community, conversation, social gatherings as a skill and something you can learn. You know, I don't think there's many other people talking about that. And certainly, you know, it's something that I know I need to work on. And it's something that I am trying to actively work on. And I think being around people who've got that skill, like you say, the modeling is probably the best way. So I think, one, be around those people who are modeling that skill. And so, Jacques, that's why it would be cool if we could tell people where they can find you. But then also read the articles of people who've done it and try and learn how to do it yourself. So maybe just to end up, Jacques, you could tell people where they can find you, what articles to read, top tips. Maybe we could leave on how people start to get a little bit more conscious in their interactions.
Yeah. No, this has been a really generative conversation, and I always love it when people like speak with passion, and I like conviction. And so whenever I'm in connection with someone who has like a conviction, even if it is something kind of weird, it's like it's fun to be in that, like
Yeah, for
we're
sure.
so speaking with conviction is a social risk because we can come across as dogmatic or opinionated, but it's like, no, like let's have fun, let's be passionate, let's fully embody our speech. So I'm at thepartyscientist.com. I quit most social media, so that's the place you'll want to go. I want to just emphasize that this conversation has been focused on left brain processes, and when we started chatting about empathy, that's much more of a right brain process. And I think it's really important to emphasize that, like, the intellect and speech exists to create that emotional connection, which is a right brain process. And so, like, the intellect is not the intellect is the means, it's not the end. Like the part that is most nourishing is when we're not like trying to come up with something in our head to say. It's when we're like fully looking at someone and perhaps touching them or dancing with them or singing. And I'm much more excited about these like nonverbal methods for connection and how to incorporate more of those into our intellectual connections. And so, yeah, maybe we can all end with a tip or takeaway from this conversation as a closing ceremony. And I think what's most important is, I mean, I love the kind of mortality hack, but naming a dynamic and naming an intention. Hey, I want to invite us into a deeper connection with each other. Can we do that? Can we put away our phones? Can we be really focused in connecting with each other? We don't know when we're going to get together again. Naming an intention like that is a facilitation tool, a micro facilitation tool that it's really bold. I mean, people don't have intentional conversations or dinner parties. And so it is bold. But when you're with someone who is willing to participate and who is also courageous and knows that you're doing it, then it will be a lot easier. So naming social dynamics and naming intentions explicitly in a group, I think, is one of my takeaway tips and tools.
I want to answer your question that you asked at the beginning, Jacques, which is excited ? Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yes.
You. Very excited.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was super cool. So much. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, we need a hell yes.
Hell yeah.
For sure. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that we got to talk to you in the end. Thank you so much for taking the time. We do appreciate your time and your connection and your enthusiasm and your passion. Thank you. All the best. Take care,
Jacques. Next party. Woo, we're Burning Man.
Partyscientist.com. Partyscientist.com.
Russ,
Thank you for listening to the Rebel Scientist podcast. If you know someone who would benefit from the topics in this episode, share it with them. Feel free to DM us on all social media channels or email us at sarah@rebelscientist.com. We read and reply to all messages. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you're listening on a channel that allows reviews such as iTunes, please leave us a fantastic review. We value your support. It all helps. All opinions of our guests are their own opinions and do not necessarily reflect their views of Sarah Turner or Russ Eisenman. This is not medical advice. If you have a health problem, please seek a medical professional. The Rebel Scientist podcast is a Breaking the Gray production, hosted by Sarah Turner and Russ Eisenman. Audio production by Dave Visaya and the podcast engineers. For more information and for our biohacking shopping guide, visit rebelscientist.com. To hear more incredible Breaking the Gray production podcasts, visit breakingthegray.com. That's gray with an E, breakingthegray.com.